Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Talk Thursday. We have a wonderful guest here by the name of Kathie and Kathie Currier with Coldwell Banker Senior Realty. We're excited for today's program because it's really important information that we believe that everyone should know this, specifically if you are retired, even if you're not retired. The topic is trash and treasure.
From trash and treasures to transition.
So say that 10 times. But we welcome all of you, and we have this mini lecture once a month, Talk Thursday, that I think we're going to start calling it. It's just, because we decided to ask our special guest questions during the program. So we have my wonderful friend Sylvia with Visiting Angels Cincinnati West, which is the #1 healthcare provider in Ohio.
We were voted Best of the West for 2023, just announced. We actually got the secret on that. It's coming out. Yeah. And we're Family Choice Award for 2020, 21, 22, and we're waiting to hear on 23. So we're very happy to be a part of this community and providing a wonderful service of non-medical in-home care to seniors.
So that's pretty impressive, Sylvia.
Yes,
so it's a great service, and we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end, but we're going to dive right into it. We welcome our audience today. We have Soup for the Soul afterwards. So
make some noise. Let them know you're here.
So Kathie, give us a little information about yourself, and why is it that we had chosen from trash and treasure to transition?
Well, I am a seniors real estate specialist. It's called SRES. It's a designation that I've earned through the National Association of Realtors, and I focus my business on working with people my age and older. And I help them when they've got to make a lifestyle transition, or if they just want to make their homes feel more comfortable in order to stay there for a good long time. I've been in real estate since 1985, but I was on the commercial side for over 25 years, and switched to the residential side of things in 2010. So I've been doing this kind of work for at least that many years. And we decided to talk today about from trash and treasures to transition, because even if you're not planning a transition at this point in time, it always helps to make your home feel comfortable and safe and healthy for you to live in. And winter months, when we're stuck at home a lot, is a good time to start working on these kinds of things, because we have time. And then when springtime comes and you're ready to start cleaning, makes everything a whole lot easier if you're a little more organized.
Well, that would lead us then to our first question, Nora.
Yeah.
Well, and this is a great time of year too, because it's we're at the end of the winter time, and this is a great way to spring clean, specifically for those that are getting ready for, I should say, retirement, or kids moving out, or whatever it may be. So we have a lot of stuff in our house. What do we do with the stuff in our house?
Well, everybody who's lived in their home for many, many years, it took that many years to get all the stuff into the house, so it's not going to be a really quick process to try to get rid of it all, or to try to clear out what you don't need anymore. And I think the biggest thing that we need to start with is something called removing the story from the stuff. And there are a ton of books in the libraries these days on how to get started with the idea of downsizing. One of them that I happen to use quite often is this one. It's called Take the You Out of Clutter. And it has a lot of really good, you don't have to read it, page for page. You can just go to whatever chapter is where you are right now, but it's got an awful lot of really good thought processes to work your way through, and good examples. And I think that's the key to it, is to give yourself a little bit of time, if you have the leisure and the pleasure and the ability to give yourself the time and you're not in a real hurry, and to start removing the stories from the stuff. The problem is we keep so many things in our homes because we are emotionally attached to those things. And it's a matter of who gave it to me, where I was when I got it, what I was doing when I got it. It has a special meaning to it. So the idea is to realize you're not attached so much to the item as you are to the memory and the story that's behind that item. So if you can, I tell my clients, take a photo of the item itself. And if you can, in your own handwriting, write a couple pages, a couple paragraphs, even a few sentences about why that item means so much to you. And then make a scrapbook with the picture and your story. And then you have the photo, you have the story to pass on and to share with others, but you don't need to keep the item. So that gives you the freedom to let things go when it's very bittersweet to have to do that at times.
So is there a recommended way to start the whole process of decluttering?
Well, first thing I tell people is, again, it takes time. So start small. It's to look at the whole task, it's overwhelming. So start small. Ladies, the first thing I did was start with my purse. Okay? There's a lot of stuff in my purse that I really don't need to be carrying around, if I really think about it. The second thing would be to start one drawer, one chest of drawers, one closet, one cabinet at a time. And maybe use the concept of time blocking. Nobody can, if you don't have an entire day to do this, then set aside maybe just 15 to 20 minutes or half hour that you're going to do something concrete. Tackle that junk drawer in your kitchen. Everybody's got one. Mm-hmm. Tackle that junk drawer in your kitchen. I happen to have two. And take that 30 minutes and empty out that junk drawer and throw out the stuff that isn't necessary, and then organize and put back the stuff that you want to keep. That's the way to just get yourself started. And there's a whole different concept if you're in a hurry for some reason or other.
What's that?
All right.
We want to know.
Since you asked, if all of a sudden you have a health problem, something has happened and you're going to have to be gone and you may not be able to get back to your home. In that case, I work with companies called senior move management companies. And I have actually had instances where someone I've worked with has to be out of their home and has to have it on the market within 2 weeks.
Oh my.
Well, how do you do this? Well, these senior move management companies, once you decide what you're going to take to wherever you're going to be going next, about a week, 5 days usually, and by the end of that week, because they allow people a day or two to make appointments to come and get what they bought, that house has been broom clean, ready for me to take photos within a week and a half after we get someone out. So it can happen, and they're very good at what they do. Mm-hmm.
So it's determining who gets what. That's the question.
Okay.
So if you have, siblings or children,
Yeah.
who gets what? Who do you turn? So that's the question we have to ask
All right,
ourselves.
that's true. I always tell people, and again, this is assuming you have just at least a little bit of time. I always tell people, try not, everybody says, well, I'm going to make sure my daughter gets this. I want my daughter to take this when I die, okay? I want my son to do this, or I know that so-and-so in my family would really love to have this. Well, my question is, why wait until you're gone to give it to them? My mother had actually colored, I'm the oldest of 6. My mother had colored stickers underneath different things in her house that she knew which color went to what child, and that was what we were going to get. And that was a great idea at first, but then as she got older, she thought, well, this is a little crazy, and she got to the point where she couldn't go shopping with my sisters and I anymore. So what she did, instead of going shopping, she started taking those items, wrapping them up and giving them to us for Christmas and birthday presents so that we would have them and we could start to enjoy them, and she could see how much we enjoyed them before she died. And it was wonderful. It was just wonderful. She gave me, my father had started her on Lenox accessory pieces, vases and bowls and things like that. So she told him when he gave her the first one, Tom, we have 6 kids. You can't just give me one because every one of the 6 is going to want one. So my father was just delighted that now he didn't have to think about what he was going to get Mom for a gift. He could just go buy another Lenox piece and it was taken care of. Well, when she got to the point where she's in an electric wheelchair and couldn't get around, she wrapped that Lenox piece for me, which happened to be a very oblong-shaped accessory vase with a pedestal that she used on her table. And she gave it to me for my birthday. Well, shortly after my father died, I invited Mom. We had Thanksgiving at our house. Dad died in August. We had Thanksgiving at our house, and I had taken that vase to a florist and asked them to please put a nice fall arrangement in it so that I could use it on my Thanksgiving table and put a candle in it, which they did. Mother walked in that door, and when she turned her head and looked at that table, oh my God, the grin on her face. It was just amazing. Yeah. She was so excited to see how much I enjoyed it and that it was back on a table the way she used to use it. And you know what? I never would have had the joy of seeing her that way. She would not have had the joy of knowing what that was like had she not given it to me before she died. So my suggestion is, if anyone in your family wants something and it's just taking up space in your home, whether it's an item of furniture or an accessory piece or a set of china, for God's sakes, give it to them now.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about China.
Okay. We can. People say to me, what should I get rid of first? Besides the fact that you could clear out your house probably 25% of what you've got if you're still caring for things for your kids or your grandkids, have them come and get it and give them a deadline by which they have to take it. And if they haven't made it by that deadline, then you're going to be able to get rid of it in whatever way you want. But things, have to realize, things you think your children or grandchildren want, if you haven't verified that with them, you better, because chances are they're not going to want it. It might have been very valuable to you, but it's no longer that way to them. Number one, they might not have that same memory, that same story behind that item, so it really doesn't mean to them what it meant to you. Number two, they're living a completely different lifestyle than you might have lived, which means that if it can't be put in a dishwasher or a microwave, they don't want it. And thirdly, I have a daughter who happens to be retired military after 20 years moving all over the world in the military. She is a minimalist. Nothing stays in her house that she doesn't need or want or that isn't useful to her. It doesn't stay. So she's not going to want to take any extra stuff. So you need to verify that the people you think want what you've got really do actually want it. Okay? Then the next thing to do is to go through anything that is broken, chipped, missing pieces, anything that is old, worn out, something that's totally out of sync right now. Those are the kinds of things to get rid of. In fact, I happen to have a list that my friends from Caring Transitions on the West Side gave me a list that they use. This is a move management company, and one of the first things they say to purge are things like paperwork, junk mail, expired coupons. How many of us have a whole wad of those sitting around? Old toiletries and makeup, expired medications, expired food items, expired spices. Anything that's expired, get rid of it, throw it out. Excess paper and plastic bags. We don't need those things. Excess office supplies. One of my junk drawers, I didn't realize that I had a wad by the time I put a rubber band, pens and pencils like this.
Yeah.
Well, we don't need that many pens and pencils, for God's sakes. I found out that restaurants whose servers are always losing their pens or pencils take a wad of things up to them and say, just give them to your servers.
That's a great idea.
They would love it. So those are the first things you want to get rid of. Yeah, that's how you start.
And you know, with the china, what I had done recently, so I have 2 sets of china from my mom. I'm not going to use the china, right? But the advice that Kathie gave us a while ago was use it. Use the china as everyday china. So the saucers, I actually use it for fruit cups or, you know, for sauces or whatever.
Right.
So I use the china quite often, actually.
And I've read that that's what they recommend, because we have these beautiful dishes in the closet and we bring them out on special occasions, and it's like, well, every day should be a special occasion, so just use it. Why put it in the closet and then one day what am I going to do with it?
Right. None of us are guaranteed tomorrow.
Right.
So you may think that it's going to be for just Christmases and Thanksgivings and things like that. Well, no.
Yeah.
Use it all the time. I have china that happens to have a gold rim on it. And for years, everybody would say, oh, you can't put that in the dishwasher. Do you know how many times my china's been in the dishwasher? And it's still just fine, thank you very much. And things like stemware, crystal stemware. My husband happened to have purchased Waterford crystal stemware that was a remembrance of his mother after she died. I never knew his mother, and I met him after he owned all that stemware. Well, I have now 8 wine goblets, 8 water goblets, and 8 champagne flutes of Waterford crystal that right now would be probably at least $55 a stem to replace it. And when I looked at it, I had to laugh. The water goblets, back when he purchased this in the probably 60s maybe, the water goblets these days are the size of wine goblets these days.
They are.
And the wine goblets really aren't any size that's used for much of anything anymore. Champagnes are always going to be champagne flutes, but how often do you have champagne? Mm-hmm. Personally, I've started to use it in the mornings for mimosas. Okay? I buy those little bottles of champagne and I treat myself to a mix of champagne and orange juice, and I use those little champagne flutes. But really, they're not of any value. And again, my daughter lives a lifestyle that's a much more casual lifestyle. She's pretty much a tomboy when you get down to it. And I've got 2 grandsons who aren't necessarily going to want crystal. Furthermore, if you've got crystal items that would hold something like fruit, and vegetables or whatever, I would only use them as a serving piece for a brief period of time. Lead crystal, you can't leave food in lead crystal. You can't leave beverages in lead crystal. So these big decanters that people had that were lead crystal decanters that could hold wine or brandy or whatever, you can't leave that stuff in those anymore because it could leach the lead into that item. So again, my great-grandmother's beautiful heavy leaded crystal bowl that I have, because I remember it on Granny's kitchen table every Sunday when we'd go have dinner there, that crystal bowl I still have. My daughter, however, never knew my great-grandmother. She doesn't have that story attached to it. And even though I might still use it once in a while, it doesn't mean anything to her. So again, keep reminding yourself, does anybody really want this? And how often am I really going to use this? You can right now many times take things like that to a consignment shop, or if it's really old, you might check with an antique dealer to see if they'd be willing to purchase it. But please realize you may not get for it what you think it's worth. Somebody else might have to make money on top of what they've paid you.
That's very valid, because it's like we collect and purchase all these wonderful things. I mean, you talk about designer bags and shoes and clothes, and then you have a hard time getting rid of it because you know what you paid for it. So it's like, how do you let emotionally go of something that I know I paid $200 for this purse and I'm only going to get nothing or $10 at a consignment shop?
Well, I look at it as, okay, I paid $200 for something. How many uses did I get out of it? Was it a kind of a purse that I carried around for months at a time or years at a time because it was such a great purse? then you've used the entire monetary value of it. It depreciates just like anything else the minute you take it out of the box. So don't look at what you paid for it. Look at, wow, I sure got a whole lot of use out of this. I've used it for its money's worth and then some. And I do that even with clothes. I have a jacket that I still wear, and I'm sure people recognize it if I wore it. But I paid a lot of money for it. It was hand painted. It was great. But I've worn it so many times over the years that it's still in fashion. But if I had to get rid of it, I could, because I know I've gotten much more use out of it than what I paid for it.
That's a good way to look at it.
And also, so would you recommend partnering, like, so I know there's going to be a time, and I'm going through that, the decluttering and, putting things aside for my children. For one's moved out, 3 live at home. But the one that moved out, yes, there's no room in his apartment, but I have his stuff organized in bins for him, as well as the other children. They're all in bins, ready to be moved out. But it was challenging for me because it was all stuff that, we grew up with, they grew up with, for me to part from. But my husband was with me at the time, and still is. But I have that person that could help me, I don't want to say declutter, to put away, to give, to get rid of, really. Because I couldn't do it by myself.
Right, and it gives you a great feeling to do that. My mom called them grandma boxes. She had things, when she gave me, as we moved out and had a place of our own, she gave us our grandma boxes to get them out of her house, okay? In my grandma's box, I found pictures I had drawn in kindergarten that she had saved, report cards that she had saved, awards that I got for something that I did that she had saved. Now, as she handed it to us, she said, each of you can do with your grandma's box what you want to do with it, but the things that are in it were special to me at the time. Whether you think they're special now to you is your decision, so you can do with it as you want. But you will now know what part of your life made some special mark on me because it's in that grandma's box.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my mom always said is she'd have everything in boxes for us that was ours. Like, you move out and you still have stuff there, and she'd put it all in boxes. And her rule was, as soon as you have your first place that you live and you're paying rent or you own, you got to come get it, and now it's yours.
And I think the other thing is there are ways to ask yourself questions to determine whether something is worth keeping. I happened to be working with a woman one day and walked through her home as she showed me everything, and she opened up a closet. It happened to have a whole bunch of military paraphernalia in it that was obviously very old, from like a World War time or something. And she sort of stepped away from the closet and just sort of, like, I could see her body was stiffening up and tightening, and her hands were this way. She's sort of wringing her hands. And I asked her, I said, were these your items? Were you in the military? No, they were my husband's. Well, her husband was long gone, and she still had all these things that belonged to her husband. And I said, so why are you keeping all of this? Well, he wore that jacket, or he earned those medals, and he touched these things. I said, I understand that, but tell me this. Do you know what all those medals stood for, what all those ribbons are for? Do you know what they mean? No. Do you know anybody that could tell you the stories about what he went through when he was wearing this? Did he ever share it? No. So right now, the only thing those things are doing for you is making you nervous, upset, and feel bad. You feel bad because your husband isn't here, and this is a reminder that he's not here. I said, so I think that it would serve your husband's honor, and it would be a terrific thing for you to honor him by giving these things to a military veterans or organization where they understand what all of this meant. They understand what those ribbons mean, and many of them have stories that could go with all of this. I said, they'll collect it, they will honor it, and I think that would be a wonderful thing for you to do in honor of your husband. And she said, you know, I never thought of that, but I think you're right. Mm-hmm. So it gave her the permission to share. Likewise, I worked with someone who had lost a child when that baby was very young. She still had the booties and the little shoes. She still had some of the baby's outfits, the things that were just in boxes. And I said, okay, again, let's honor the memory that you have of this child that these things belong to. There are a ton of mothers who can't afford these things for a child. Why don't you donate them to an organization that helps mothers who are having babies and can't afford these things? So that's what she wound up doing with the blankets and everything. So that's the kind of thing you can think about too.
Well, Kathie, if they want to get more information or talk to you more about decluttering, how is the best way to contact you?
Well, as I said, I'm with Coldwell Banker. I'll be happy to give you, and I've got some of my cards with me, but not all, but anybody that wants any information that would back up what we've talked about today, including my phone number, everything, my brochure, I'll be glad to give it to you. Just turn in your names so that I know, and I'll bring packets up to the Senior Center. My name is, as I said, is Kathie with an I-E and a K, so it's Kathie. The last name is Currier, as in Currier and Ives. There's no O in it. It's not Courier. It's Currier. And my phone number happens to be 513-687-3161. That is my mobile number. And I can be reached, and my email is literally my name, Kathie.Currier we used to be cbws.com, which stands for Coldwell Banker West Shell, but we've gotten rid of the West Shell now. However, I've kept that email address. So it's cbws.com.
And we will put that in the chat box also. So those of you who are listening in, we'll put that in the chat box. Mm-hmm. And we are going to open up to some questions and answers, but we are going to end the live stream. But we will see everybody next month for our next Talk Thursday, our mini lecture, Talk Thursday. But thank you for tuning in, and God bless everybody. We will see you soon at the Y or the Colerain Senior Center. Thank you, Sylvia, and thank you, Kathie.
Thank you, Kathie.
Thank you,
Nora.